My Android phone was invented right here at the Cambridge Innovation Center, CIC, and we're in the middle right now of Kendall Square. There's the Kendall Square T-stop. My name is Bob Krim, and I am somebody who was a professor out at Framingham State University teaching innovation, and somebody who's worked with lots of different people to study innovation along the way. Most of us think that Boston has a story, which we do, which is about the revolution. And we have the Freedom Trail that connects the sites and those sorts of ways that you can do a walking tour of the revolutionary history of the city. There is, however, really a second story that most of us don't know as well and really need to know. This area is one of the most innovative in the world and the most innovative city region in the United States. I worked with hundreds of people and scientists and historians and others, economists, for a number of years, and we studied all the potential innovations that were originated here and actually changed the nation of the world. They were big innovations. And we came up with not 10 or 20, which would be a lot for a city, but 450 innovations which have changed the nation of the world. As I say, nobody else has that. And so what we have felt is that this story is one that you need to be able to access in different ways. Well, one thing we did, we're asked by Logan Airport and have a great permanent exhibit on the 50 top innovations there. But we also think that there needs to be a walking tour where you can really experience, whether it's Kendall Square or whether it's the place where the telephone was invented near the City Hall Plaza, that you get to know where these innovations are. And there also are several new museums that are opening up towards the end of this summer, which are going to be telling those stories. So there are things to see that you may not know about and may really appreciate. So we're going to take off in just a minute and go down to see the first of the 20 sites that are on the trail and the 6 that we'll talk about in this cast this afternoon. Here we are at the first site on the Innovation Trail, and this site is one that goes back to the very earliest history of Boston. 5 years after the settlers came, they decided that they would put part of their very lean amount of tax money towards starting a public school. Now, this was not the tradition in England. This is not the tradition in other places. And no other colony has ever started a schooling system so early. And this is something that was a very different sort of school. It was a school that admitted all of every class to it. Not what they had in England at the time, and something which was really an innovation for its time. Boston Latin School is one of the top 20 high schools in the United States at this point. Here it is nearly 400 years later. Again, the innovation here, public schools supported by tax, and everybody was admitted to it.
most famous dropout from Boston Latin School is Benjamin Franklin, who, ironically, many people would consider perhaps the most famous inventor in American history. The second innovation on our trail today, out of the 6 that we're going to be talking about, is one that is a medical innovation. The scourge in the world at that time was smallpox. In 1721, there was a smallpox epidemic in Boston. They came about every 7 or 10 years at that point. And the way of handling that smallpox epidemic was one that generated a great deal of controversy. 3 key people in the story. One, Reverend Cotton Mather, who was the religious head of Boston at the time. Second, an enslaved African who worked in his house named Onesimus. And third, a country doctor named Dr. Zebediel Boylston. So here we are in 1721, and there is discussion going on about what can we do about the epidemic. And quarantine was the main thing that people did at that time. However, Mather had a conversation with Onesimus, the enslaved man who worked for him, about why Onesimus said that he wouldn't get smallpox. Mather asked Onesimus to explain. And Onesimus talked about that in his village in the tribe, the Guaramatese tribe in Africa, that there was a medical thing that was done to help with smallpox. And that was taking a little of the pus from the blisters of from the smallpox that were on somebody's arm, cutting it open, getting a little bit of the infected material, and then transferring that to somebody who hadn't had smallpox yet, and could be a kid or it could be a grown-up, whatever, and making a cut and putting that pus in, and from that the person got a very light case of smallpox, and most survived. And Onesimus said, that was what happened with me. And this intrigued Mather at the time. And Mather said, let's try to do this here, and went to the country doctor, Dr. Zebediel Boylston, and asked whether he would do it. And Boylston thought deeply about it, and he decided to do it. He included his own son, as well as others in the first people who got it, and this became very controversial in the town. Among the white inhabitants of Boston at the time, there was a deep distrust that this was a positive thing. Listening to an African man on a medical application that might happen was something which they did not believe should happen. Only 1 out of 40 died. Of those who didn't, who used the quarantine, 1 out of 12 died. And this was major. Mather, who was part of the Royal Medical Society, went and wrote it up, and it went to was printed there, and in fact some of the British royal family within a year or 2 was inoculated in this way. So this is the second major innovation that we've looked at that has changed either the nation or the world. And it happened in the house that Mather lived in was right near the Old North Church over there. You can see the white steeple of it, which is in the north end of Boston. A Scottish immigrant named Alexander Graham Bell came to Boston in about 1873 to do two things. One, he was very interested in what was happening in the world of the telegraph, which was then the hot thing like the internet was 10 years ago. And right at this site was a building that had a lab that had lots of different people working on the inventions to the telegraph. The other thing is that he had gotten a part-time job teaching at Boston University to the deaf, which is something he had done in the past. Bell was fascinated with not just how the telegraph, which at that time worked with Morse code only, how the Morse code might work, and how to do that faster, which is what was the thing people were trying to do. But he was interested in the idea of, could you hear human voice over telegraph wires rather than just code? And so he came here and he worked on this idea, and over 1873, 1874, 1875, he worked in this building in the garret, and he came up with the design for an implement in February, March of 1876. He needed the best draftsman that he could find, and the best draftsman he could find was a son of runaway slaves who had come to Boston in the 1850s. And this, the son of that couple was a man named Lewis Latimer, who did the patent work, which was very important later on in what became a large patent battle of other people claiming that they had done what Bell had done. In any case, he put together this implement, and within a couple of months became nationally and world famous for doing this. And he was asked to then make it, not just have the one version he had. And so manufacturing of telephones began, and it began in Boston. And the first telephone exchanges, all of that happened here. And for the next 45 years, the Bell Telephone Company nationally was based in Boston. So this is innovation number 3 of the 6 that we're going to talk about on our podcast today. So we're at Mass General Hospital, or Mass General Hospital Brigham as it's now called, and we're on the site of a second major medical innovation that changed the nation and the world. And this one has to do with the use of ether, or anesthesia as we call it today, and how that led to the birth of what's modern surgery. So this begins with laughing gas was something that dentists used in the 1830s and 40s in the United States, and was also used at carnivals for different things. And there were a couple of dentists and doctors who felt that there was a chance that this could be used in surgery. And the head of surgery for Mass General Hospital, a guy named John Collins
Warren, from the distinguished Warren family, where a general, the first general who was killed during the American Revolution. Anyhow, the Surgeon General of this hospital, Collins, was interested in seeing whether this might be able to be used in surgery. And so he asked a dentist to prepare a demonstration. And this was taking a tumor off the neck, a very large tumor off the neck of a patient. And the gas was given, and from that gas, the patient went out, and at the end, the patient was asked, "What did you feel?" He said, "A slight numbing scratch." And the doctor said, "No pain?" "No pain." Well, in any other situation like this, the patient would be screaming loud. In fact, the reason for having the operating theater on the top floor of this museum, of this hospital, as with other hospitals, was so that the screams from those people being operated on were not, or were heard much less in the lower floors of the hospital. In any case, the news from this spread wildly. There's a piece that I've read that there was somebody on a ship who had run from the hospital, jumped on the ship, gone to Glasgow, and when he arrived in Glasgow, he ran up to the hospital there and told them what had happened. And that day, they experimented with it positively at the hospital in Glasgow. And the news from the Mass General thing went by telegraph wire from England, Scotland to Paris and other places, and Mass General and this incredible innovation became important throughout the world. The takeaway from this is that modern surgery was developed. You could go into the body cavity, whether it was an appendix or whether lungs or whatever in the body cavity, to do surgery, and it changed the whole nature of this. Almost every medical textbook in the world that has a little thing on the main breakthroughs in medicine over the years mentions this, and Mass General is really world famous for this. So this is innovation number 4. We're now going to cross over the river to Cambridge and to the Kendall Square part of Cambridge.
We're here at the 5th site of the 21 that were sites on the Innovation Trail. This one, Draper Instrumentation Labs, has played a major role in various air systems over the last 70 years, starting with planes and their guidance systems during storms in the 1930s and 40s with Charles Draper, and continuing through. And during the late 1960s, the United States was focused on, in the world of technology, in coming through on the promise to put a man on the moon by the end of 1970. One of the biggest challenges was to figure out how to take the size computers that still were being used in the 1960s, which filled rooms, if not buildings, and how to miniaturize that so that you could, on the lunar landing module that you could fit in a very, very sophisticated computer system to help its guidance. And one of the key people on that is a woman named Margaret Hamilton, who put together a team to work specifically on the miniaturization of the computers for the lunar module. And along the way, many challenges. There are pictures of Margaret Hamilton with the printouts that go, computer printouts that go sky high that she's carrying around and that sort of thing. And the teamwork that she put together and led was able to develop a very small miniature computer that could fit in that two-person module. And the system worked beautifully until the last minute or two when there was a significant problem, and the backup system that was built in saved the situation, and the module landed safely on the moon after a minute of real panic, both in the Space Command Center as well as on the module itself. So here we are at the site of the sixth innovation, and that is the anti-COVID-19 vaccination that was developed by Moderna, and that was in early 2021. And Moderna is really, as one of the major producers of the anti-vaccine, is also joined by different facilities in Greater Boston for Johnson & Johnson as well as Pfizer. And so on this last major innovation, which has changed the nation and changed lives in many ways, this is something which had been developed over a 10-year period in Moderna, looking at the messenger and RNA. And out of that work came the possibility, when COVID came up, that a solution, a vaccine as a potential solution, would come out of that. And so yet another innovation that has helped to change the nation and the world. And this is right here in the Kendall Square part of Cambridge, a very vital area in biotech, and Moderna is really the star of biotech in this neighborhood. This is innovation number 6.